Hey everyone,
Hello.
welcome.
It's so good to see you guys.
It's so good to see you. Hi everybody who's in the chat, welcome to you too. My name is Pau, and I'm a member of Nerds and Beyond, as well as the Friends of Random Acts group in New York City. And this event is being hosted by both of those groups. So we are so excited to have Rachel and Max Rebo, aka Robbie, here with us. If you don't know who Max Rebo is, go to Google now. He's basically amazing. But if you're a Star Wars fan, you'll probably know who Max is. But just a few notes. You can definitely put questions in the chat for us. I also have a list of questions from people on Twitter. So we're going in with a few questions. And we also have the link in the chat that's going to be going in a few times to donate to Random Acts. So this is benefiting Random Acts. You all know that Rachel's the executive director of RA, and Robbie, aka Max Rebo, is a big supporter. And so we're excited to be doing this for Random Acts today. So yeah, with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. The link is already in the chat, so make sure you donate if you can. But I wanted to start with, yes, up, down, all around. With a question that's kind of a basic one. We're having a conversation with Rachel and Robbie. How do you all know each other?
We worked on a television
we
show.
were pen pals for a long time.
So if you don't know Supernatural.
I'm getting a slight echo. Is anybody else, or is that just me?
I got that, but it went away.
Okay, cool.
We're okay.
Yeah, no, we worked on a television show called Supernatural. That's where but I don't think we actually met in person.
No, that's what's weird. I was a huge fan of your writing, but that's why I joke that it's pen pals, but it was kind of because there was like this communication of I was acting his words and he was writing awesome words. And there was always like these inside multi-level jokes that I really appreciated. And so there was like a communication of like, wow, oh, she got that one. So we'd add like another one the next episode that we were working together. So yeah. That's my experience at least.
Yeah.
I know it was at a New York Comic-Con where I think you all got to meet in person.
Yeah. Rachel came down to Artist Alley and then we had a great chat. And then actually, I think that was when we also ran into Sarah Gamble, I think. We found some weird green room that had like a mannequin in it and like two other people, and then Sarah walked in, and then so it was great. It was like a little miniature Supernatural reunion.
Yeah, it was lovely, and I was super excited and definitely fangirling over me getting to meet Robbie for the first time.
Well, the feeling was more than mutual. Like as I said to Rachel when we first met, like Meg's had different iterations throughout Supernatural and played by other actors, but Rachel's version, when she comes in, one of her first lines is a reference to one of my favorite Paul Simon's songs. She says, "These are the days of miracle wonder," and like the delivery of that was just mwah. And I remember watching through it the first time, and I was like, "Oh, I can't wait to write Meg." And then the first time I killed her off. That's totally on me. I was involved with other episodes and when she was around, but when it finally fell to me, I had to kill Meg. I'm so as always when I see you, I'm sorry.
It was such an awesome. We'll get to talk about that episode, but I love that episode. It was exactly what I wanted. So it wasn't in any way sad for me. It was actually just like wonderful to have that many things kind of tied up that beautifully. And there was, interestingly, I don't know if you know, but there was a panel where it was asked if Meg died, how would I want her to go? And it was exactly that. So yeah, isn't that perfect?
There you go, meant to be. Yeah. I'm glad I got to do it.
So as you all know, Nerds and Beyond specifically is all about nerddom and fandom and nerdy stuff. And we've actually interviewed both of you before and asked you a lot of nerdy questions in the past. So we have some background on that. But I wanted to start off by asking you all a little bit about what were some of your favorite nerdy things that you remember from childhood, and did you belong to any fandoms?
Yes, and lots of nerdiness. Well, to start with Max Rebo, I had all the Star Wars figurines in the C-3PO case.
Yeah.
Where you filled out all that. So I had Max Rebo and lots of others. And then also it's another indication of my other complete nerdiness for kindness, which is that I actually gave them, a friend's older brother was having a hard time, really feeling some depression and stuff, and I just thought it would cheer him up, so I gave all my Star Wars collection to him, which I later was like, what was I thinking? But,
what's funny is I had the same background. I had the Star Wars, and I'm glad you call them figurines, because that's what we called them when I was a kid. There was no action figures or but I had them all, but I had them in a Darth Vader case. So I guess
those were the two options. I think those were the two options, right?
But yeah, it was a similar thing. It was like a trifecta of movies when I was a little kid. It was like Star Wars, and then the original Battlestar Galactica was on TV, and then I brought a lot of props because I know this isn't radio. And then the Christopher Reeve Superman came out, and that that just blew my mind. So yeah, and then
Dark Crystal,
and then Clash of the Titans, Never-Ending Story. Like there was this weird sort of collection of, and they were all kind of different and weird in their way. Krull was another one, and it just I got kind of sucked in from Star Wars and never really left. I wasn't a subscriber to Bantha Tracks, which was like the original sort of like Star Wars fan club, but I definitely secured a couple in my day. And if fandom was like a more online thing when I was a kid, I definitely would have been on Star Wars Twitter and Tumblr and TikTok, whatever the hell people do now. I don't know.
I always took my I took my nerdiness very seriously. So I was more the Star Wars started from before I was born. So I have my mother to thank, because I literally saw the first films when I was in her stomach, or went to the first films when I was in her stomach. Because she has stories of there'd be lightsaber battles was the most I ever kicked and stuff. I was really into it. But then when I was young, I was very serious about trying to harness the Force and things. I didn't quite separate reality from anyway.
Do you have a sense though from when you were a kid, when? Because I feel like there's two senses. First you have oh, I'm a nerd, I like all this stuff, and then there's a secondary part where you kind of find your people. For me, it was really easy. He was right in my house. As my brother. He's just as big a nerd as I am. But did you have a sense of at a certain age when you started? Because I feel like now people find them online and through other places. It
took me a long time. I was mostly I just didn't fit in.
Right,
so in grade school and stuff, it was all the other kids were into 90210 and I was watching Twin Peaks. I didn't understand them at all. I think my first day of school, I came home and my parents said I kept talking about these kids, and I was so confused and bewildered by them. I didn't really find those connections. There was a few things when I was I think when I was around 4 and 5, I had the astronauts club with some friends.
Oh, cool.
And then I had a paleontology club. So I found some nerdy things.
You like Max Fisher from Rushmore, you were in a paleontology club. That's amazing.
I'm a true nerd. But also in terms of fandom, my mom was a heavy duty Trekkie. So I grew up going to Star Trek conventions with her.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
When I was very little. So
that's amazing. I don't think I went to a convention until I was much, much older. I don't think it was a thing that we had a lot of access to in suburban Michigan or Detroit, anyways. But I do remember as I got older, finding people and you'd see a kid with a Star Wars shirt and you're like, that's my dude right there. And you'd go over and you'd talk about whatever. And then suddenly it was this instant friendship. And it was interesting for me to feel it at certain points, you're saying, it makes you feel like an outsider, and then there are other times in your life where it brings the people. It's like a magnet, it brings the people into your world that are, for me, has been some of my lifelong friends.
I know. I feel like I was always in search of people as nerdy as I was, like
Yeah.
as deeply nerdy.
Right.
I think
We're kind of next level, like being in the astronaut club is intense.
That's right. I remember I was a guy I was with for many years. When we first, like our first date, we were watching a Shakespeare film, and there was a word we didn't understand, and we went to look it up, and then we were giving definitions in iambic pentameter. And I was really excited because I said, "Oh, I met like a fellow nerd," and I felt so connected in that moment. And he looked at me and he was like, "Nerd? No," because he ended up, he was a musician and stuff. So I think he was in extreme denial of their nerdy, the deep nerdiness, and so that kind of summed up our relationship.
Right.
So I feel like we had a quick question in the chat, which is for Robbie about New York Comic Con.
Oh, yes.
And whether or not if you're going to be joining New York Comic Con this year.
Unfortunately, this year, no. I'm a little bit booked up for the rest of the year work-wise, but hoping to come back next year. I love that show, not just because it's where I met actually both of you guys, but it's just, my wife is from New York, so it's a great way to kind of, for me to have everything, family, friends, and everything. It's also one of the best shows I have a lot of friends that are overseas, and it's a great way to kind of get everybody together. But unfortunately, just from a work standpoint, I'm not gonna be able to make it this year. First time in a while, so I'll be back next year, hopefully.
We'll miss you.
But we like the fact that you're working though, and that means more creative content from Robbie, and I get to fangirl a bit.
hopefully down the road. So yeah. Unfortunately, no. Sorry. Thank you for asking, though.
That's okay. We'll miss you, but we can read your comics in the meantime.
That's true.
Which kind of segues to my next question, which is if you can share a little bit, Robbie specifically first, about your projects that you're currently working on. There are some that are public, and I don't know if you can give us a sneak peek to anything. If not, that's okay. But if you can share about anything that you're currently working on.
Most of it is stuff I can't really talk about. I'm writing a couple of pilots that'll be for television or whatever it's called now, streaming. I don't know what it is, TV. And then I just finished writing a movie, and I'm going to write another one now. But it's all kind of stuff that hopefully it gets made. Who knows? But it's a job. It's a living. I'm currently writing the Suicide Squad for DC, which has been a ton of fun. And I'm doing a creator-owned comic that'll hopefully be out at the end of the year with my buddy Owen, who's a really brilliant artist. It's just a very short. It's a crime comic through the lens of superheroes, but it's a little graphic novel that'll hopefully be out at the end of the year. So yeah, that's it. That's all I can talk about. I'm sorry, it's super boring. Most of the work I do is like top secret.
I was gonna say that's not at all boring, and that's it. It's like I'm only doing all these amazing, awesome things. So.
It's a weird business because I'm during this past year has actually been a very busy year, but not everything gets made, and not everything I have control over. Like I wrote a movie a year ago, and I have no idea. I think right now they're just casting directors, and it's like in the feature side of things, it's not like TV. You don't have as much say as a writer, but you also just don't have as much control over your destiny, which is a real reason why I got into comics, which is it's something similar to the TV vibe, which is like you're making a little movie every couple months, and that's what's great about when you're on staff on a show. And so yeah, I've enjoyed working for Marvel and DC, but I really kind of want to do my own thing. So there's a couple other things that hopefully they get made, but I also hate talking about stuff that'll I have no idea if it'll get made. But the graphic novel will be. It's being drawn. It's going to take a little while because we both have regular day jobs, but it's a labor of love, and hopefully it'll be out later this year.
That's awesome. I'm very excited for that. Rachel, so kind of a similar question. Do you have any projects that you can share with us, Random Acts or otherwise?
Well, that's really my life energy right now. It all goes into Random Acts, which it's such and as you well know, it's such an amazing staff. And so there are now over 150 people who volunteer there.
Wow.
And it's just this incredible, hardworking, vibrant staff. And we've really, I feel like everyone puts so much into making it a professional endeavor, even though it's volunteer. And there are always so many projects we're working on. It's like a 35 ring circus of goodness. Like it's really exciting to me. Like it's a thing that I leaves me like going to bed feeling full, is just the number of projects where I'm like, oh, people are better off for this project. And to me, that's just like, there's nothing more joyful. I think with acting for years, there's always that hope that you can touch someone, or you're creating a character where that's going to impact someone's life in a really positive way. And I think art does that, but you don't necessarily know that outcome. So you're just kind of throwing those things out and hoping. And it's kind of amazing to be working on something where there's these tangible things where I'm like, I know someone's life is changed by this.
That's super cool.
So that's, and I'll talk more on Sunday. We've got another panel. I'll talk more about like our food equity projects that we're working on, which I'm very excited about that area. Like, to me, finding a lot of the trick of this job too is like finding those ways that you can really impact people that are falling through the cracks of systems all over the world, and what's going to be the most helpful, life-changing, positive thing that you can do. And I'm very interested also in like creating these communities, these supportive communities. So it's not that aren't I so wonderful and magnanimous, I'm helping you. It's no, we're human beings and we all need help. So how can we help each other? And I think that there's so much in the area of food systems and food equity that can really forever change things, and that really connects us to each other in a beautiful way. So I'm excited by these projects.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's super
so definitely you all stay tuned on Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern. Rachel will be back, and we'll be talking a lot about Random Acts and different projects that are happening with that. But yeah, I wanted to transition back to asking you all about the episode you mentioned, Goodbye Stranger, which is personally a favorite for so many reasons. Music, Rachel, you know, Meg.
There's a Star Wars reference.
Yes.
This is the script, actually. I brought it with me. I don't know if you can see it or not, but this is the
script.
That's the script.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I watched it last night, and actually I hadn't watched it since it aired. I don't think, actually. There's so much I had forgotten. There were like full scenes. I was like, I don't remember writing that one. But it was great, and you're terrific in it. And there's a scene in it that I had forgotten about, and I went and I found. In the writers' room, we didn't really hang out in there, past the first 2 weeks, because there wasn't a traditional writers' room. But in all of our rooms, we had whiteboards, and I would always put my episodes up on the board, just kind of break them more traditionally. And usually I would, even though we didn't have a room, I would like pull in, Adam or Andrew or Bobo, and we would kind of just go through the beats of the story. I don't know if Bob was there that season or not yet. I can't remember when he joined. It's all a blur. But I was looking at, there was like different iterations of the board. There's like the kind of shitty version that I just would kind of pitch to buddies. And then there would be the one that I would pitch to Jeremy and Bob. And there was a scene, I looked at the photos before watching the episode, and there was a scene, I had it up there as the 3 Days of the Condor scene. And I was like, what the fuck was the 3 Days of the Condor scene? And then so I watched the episode, and it's actually the scene where it's still my favorite scene in the episode, because you guys are great in it. It's a scene between you and Misha as you're in the house, and you have I wrote it very specifically, the line for you, because I knew just the cadence of your voice. The scene opens up with the line, do you remember do you ever miss the apocalypse?
I was going to ask her. I was miss the apocalypse.
Yeah, and that scene was inspired by there's a scene in 3 Days of the Condor. It's one of my favorite scenes in the movie, where Cliff Robertson and John Houseman are they're if you haven't seen the movie, please watch it. It's fantastic. Forgive the 70s score. It's still a great movie. I'm sure there's something problematic in it, but it's of a time. But it's got a great scene in it halfway through the movie where these two characters are trying to find Robert Redford's character. And it's just the two of them kind of shooting the shit. And it's the kind of thing that would usually get cut from the movie. But John Houseman talks about missing the Cold War. And what he really misses is the clarity. And that was something we did a lot in the writer's room, or when we were kind of selling the idea or the episode to Jeremy and Bob, was like you'd reference a movie. So it's kind of like our version of this scene. So it was kind of cool going back and seeing like my shitty board version just said 3 Days of the Condor scene. My next board version was like a little bit more laid out about you guys talking about the apocalypse. And then it led to that exchange. And it's funny, you mentioned it before, there was a lot of, I don't want to say pressure, but there was a lot of us, internally, especially Jeremy and Bob, who were like, okay, like this is a character who's been on the show for a long time. It was one of the longest.
She was the longest lasting demon. It wasn't just me. This from the first season.
One of the longest lasting characters, period. And so we were like, let's make sure that we're really touching on a lot of the things that this character went through in the various iterations. And that's why we definitely wanted to kind of have scenes with Meg and Castiel to make sure that we were touching on their history. And then also we really wanted to have some scenes, and it just worked out from a season standpoint because, Sam was sick from the trials. We really wanted to make sure we had scenes between Sam and Meg because they have a unique history because Meg had worn that meat suit. And so it was definitely really fun to go back and watch all of Meg's episodes, and then to watch all of the episodes where you played Meg as well. So it was a lot of fun to write that episode.
It's amazing. It's the first time I've heard a lot of that. So it's amazing to know the richness of what went into it. But I definitely, like, to me, playing that's why I felt like I couldn't have asked for anything more. In terms of, you really did wrap that character up so perfectly and beautifully.
We only had to change one thing. I was going through different revisions, and I remember, I think I was out of town, or maybe I was writing another episode, but Jeremy added one bit because we didn't realize you were blonde. And so, Jeremy added a little line, which is a great, that Jensen plays really funny, because it was written slightly different, but Jensen kind of found that sort of like a little bit more of the sort of the nerdy kind of funny side of Dean as always. And he was just like, what's up with the hair? And so it was just, that was the thing we had to kind of change from, I think, the production draft, but it was a blast to write it. And, there was, my history with that song goes back to college, Goodbye Stranger, because I had written a script in college, funnily enough, titled Pac-Man Fever, which was about a competitive Pac-Man player, because I was really writing commercial stuff in college, like really stuff that was going to sell. But I love that song, and I love when it kicks in. It's just a really beautiful song. It's just a great piece of music. But it was on the mix stage actually that we were doing what's called playback, when the episode's been fully mixed, and I was there at the playback. And Jeremy had a great idea at the end, because you see Castiel at the end, and he's got the angel tablet. I was going to call it a demon tablet. He had a tablet. It wasn't an iPad. And he leaves, and Tom Wright had that great shot of it the bus going into the tunnel and up there. And Jeremy was like, what if we just kind of fade the music out? And it's just sort of like this kind of more haunting ending. And it was such a great example to me of like the collaboration that you have. Like, I had the idea for the title for the song, or for the episode for that song, because that's something Supernatural would do. I wanted to end on it because I felt like it was a good song to end on. And then Jeremy, came in at the end there with such a great idea. So yeah, it's really fun. And it was fun looking through the script, because I had a tendency to really overwrite episodes. And there was always, someone tagged me in something recently, were like, how dare they cut this scene? And I was like, they didn't, it was my fault. I wrote too much shit, and I would cheat. I would like change like the margins, to try to get it. And Bob would be like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, we're going to shoot this stuff, and it's not going to make it into the movie. But there was only like one joke that I found that we cut out. Everything else was pretty much exactly as it was written. So that was pretty cool to see too.
And I'll tell you my absolutely favorite thing about, I love the way that Meg went for multiple reasons, because one, it was the perfect redemption arc. It was the only way. She really had been quite evil for a while. Yeah, so it was the only way that you could really, truly, deeply forgive her, I think. Yeah. So there's that aspect, but also I'll tell you, as a woman, my biggest beef consistently with almost every piece of film and television that I saw from when I was young was how many women just stood back as like the person they love was like in danger or hurt or something and didn't do anything. I never understood. Like I could not have played Rose in Titanic. It would have killed me.
You're like, we can both fit on this board.
Exactly. Like, or he would have been on it, but definitely not just me. And there were so many things, like even as an actress, there were so many things where I would rewrite where there was a scene where there's some fight or something, and I just like threw a shoe or something stupid. Yeah. I'm like, no, I'm in there. Like that's I can't do this.
Well, especially a character like Meg too.
Yeah.
Who's a badass. You know,
yeah.
Like
but I think you hardly, at least at that point in time, I had hardly seen a role where it was the woman who sacrificed herself for the man. And gender, I think, is, I argue that neither of those characters were gendered, neither Castiel or Meg, because probably over time they'd been both genders. They're demons and angels. I don't know that they have, but in that traditional paradigm of, you know, this meat suit or whatever and what's associated, you don't usually see that, like, or you didn't see the female character sacrifice herself. And I loved how like unblinking she was about it. It wasn't like, woe is me, I'm going to do this heroic act. It was just like, of course I'm going to, because I love him, and that's that.
Yeah. We talked a lot about that, and it's interesting because you and I hadn't formally talked, and that's why, you know, it's like you said, we had like a pen pal relationship through text, but not text messaging, but the text of the scripts. But we talked a lot about, I remember talking about, I think it was with Ben Edlin, about like, you know, thinking about Castiel as like an entity of just light, and thinking about Meg and other demons as just an entity of darkness. And what was interesting about, I think, both of their character journeys was these are people that are in these human, you know, meat suits, and they're starting to feel things that humans do, and it's really confusing. And that's what led to, that conversation is what led to what Meg says in the episode, where she's just like, I'm kind of good, which sucks now. You know, like, like she doesn't like, she's like, I wasn't put here for this. And
I love that. Yeah.
And you played it though. And again, we hadn't had this conversation. You played a lot of, I feel like, both Meg's confusion, but also there's a slight level, again, just watching it last night, of like resignation. Like I felt like the way you're playing it was like Meg had read the script too. You know, like she knew that, like, I'm probably not coming back from this, but if I'm going to do this, I'm going to put everything else, because like that's what I think is right. But playing that confusion is really hard to do, I think, and it's hard to have it not come across as like, oh, like that person seems flighty in that scene or whatever. But you added a lot of humanity to a character who's not human, you know. And it's something that, especially in that scene with you and Misha, you guys are both, you can tell that you're kind of like, you're struggling, like, is this what we're supposed to, like is this a human emotion?
That's what I love about those characters. It's like, and I guess I understand it because I've got this overly analytical part of me that has the same thing, where I'm like, this is not rational. I don't particularly like that I'm feeling this thing. It's not rational, but I have to be near this person. And so I felt like it was constantly this thing with both of them, where there wasn't an acceptance of these like human emotional responses. It was just a truth. And they'd lived long enough that they couldn't deny that it was like a truth, but it was kind of an annoyance.
And there's a tragedy to it too that I feel like you play, you know, that especially, you know, in the later scenes, you know, it's really interesting watching it sort of in hindsight. You know, again, I haven't watched it in however many years since it aired, but it was really fun watching, you know, from the moment you first appear, which we talked about, like, you know, early on, because I think if memory serves, we knew you were coming back. We knew that Meg was that character was gonna get killed off, but I actually think it was supposed to be maybe later in the season originally, and then
and part of it was the MS.
Right.
I know that was an issue. It was becoming more and more of an issue for me, and that's why I'm curious, because I have mixed feelings about the episode. In that I loved that script, I wanted to do it justice, and I love this character so much, and I wanted all of that to come through. and all those things I knew inherently about her, but it was harder and harder to actualize that because I felt so distracted by the physical things.
Well, I'll be honest with you. Like, there's again, I sat with the script and I went through my old notes, and there's nothing in it. You know, like it's all exactly what we had wanted as creators. It's all everything that's in the script. And again, I think there's, again, just looking at it page by page and going through it scene by scene, there's a lot of stuff in there that you play that wasn't. It's again as if you and I had a conversation. I had that a couple times with Felicia Day too when she played Charlie. There was because we hadn't met early on, and there was a couple moments that she played. I was like, oh, that's exactly what and I didn't put that in the script. It was just like she kind of found, and maybe we're all just nerds of a feather or whatever, but like, you know, it was everything, you know, that we had wanted creatively speaking. And so it was the only bummer was it was my only time getting to write for you. So that was the only, like, you know, bummer, from my end. But no, it was, at least, you know, from our end, I can tell you, like, going through my notes and old room notes and the script itself, you know, it not only met, but it exceeded. There's that scene and the scene at the end with Sam, particularly, you know, the way you kind of play that goodbye with him, that's way better than what was on the page, like way better. And it's like, there's a lot going on there that I feel like that you are bringing to it through both just, you know, you as an actor, but also, like, this is the hardest part, I think, to teach in acting, is like a lot of it is just in the eyes. You know, it's not on the page. It's not at all. And, you know, Tom Wright is a great shooter, and he directed that episode, and it's really, really well shot, you know, and he really kind of, I think, delivers a lot of great moments for everybody, but particularly at the end, I thought, you know, it definitely not only met, but exceeded at least my expectations.
That's amazing to hear, because those were such well written scenes, and I love that last scene with Sam too. I absolutely love.
You guys are great together. You're really funny together, and they're like, I love. It wasn't really written that way, but the way that Jared kind of did the reading of, like, that's creepy, when you had Meg talked about being inside. Like, there's just a lot of really just great moments there that, you know, again, because when you have two great actors and a great director, they're just kind of finding these moments, you know, moments between the moments, if you will, that are just great. And again, it wasn't on the page. It was all what you and what Jared in particular had seen brought.
It's all of those things, because I think great writing is not just the words themselves, but it is the situations that you set up that are conducive to those things happening. I remember years ago I did a play, and the first read of the play, I was like, the lines were, there was nothing there. It was sort of like, hey, did you play pool today? Yeah, I played pool. You know, it was like no you know, eloquent phrasing or whatever. But then the more I read it and the more and through the rehearsal process, I realized how ingenious it was, because it was one of those situations where you just kept putting characters together with so much. There was such weighted scenarios that it was conducive to that emotion coming through. So those words were very loaded. And I felt like that's what you were doing too with those scenes. It wasn't just in the words, which were brilliant themselves, but it was also in the dynamics of having those characters together, speaking about things that were conducive to these kind of nuanced, loaded interpretations.
And having you guys have just the history, like, you know, you had histories with all of those actors, and then, you know, it was just interesting watching Jared too in those scenes, because he had also played Meg, and so to watch all of those, like you're saying, those, like, it's all the dynamics that are what's the real glory of working in TV, because it's this cumulative effect, like you're talking about, that, like, if you just kind of set up the right environment and you have great actors, it's gonna really be fun.
Yeah, and I feel like also that is where the audience does a lot of the work too.
Oh, for sure. I remember that was, I think, one of the first episodes. I don't know, maybe the second episode where I was extremely online. I think at that point I had joined Twitter, and wow, there was some fascinating reactions to that. I was sent a lot of links, a lot of gift sets. There was a lot of mixed emotions throughout.
That's where, like, just in art in general, I think that is, like, you cannot. The viewer is an artist themselves, It's how they, they're interpreting it with their experience and their knowledge and whatever. And so they're imbuing it with their own layers of meaning. And, and so that's where I think in a show like this, you've got all this wealth of knowledge and feelings about these characters and stuff. So.
Yeah, it's cumulative for them too, and to your point before, like, you don't always get a sense of like, oh, is this hitting people? Like, but boy, like, you go on Twitter, especially when I was on Supernatural, like it was like, holy smokes, like you definitely and people were not shy, which was really fun, to watch them kind of go on the emotional journey. But exactly to your point, it's they have a relationship with the show too. And it's ongoing, and so to watch that kind of evolve, at least over my time there, was really amazing. And then meeting different people, whether it was online or at conventions, and hearing like people like ask me, "Hey, is this what you meant?" And I was like, "Oh no, but that's really cool." Or also like, "Oh no, actually we did this," and they're like, "No, but what you really did was this, right?" Like, and I'm like, "Yes, it's whatever you say it is," because as exactly like you just said, Rachel, like they're the author in the end, like it's the version playing in their mind. That's going to resonate. It's like once we release it into the world, it's out of our hands.
Yeah. And I like so a fun one. I don't know if but the line goes to my unicorn, your brother and my unicorn, which was I love that line so much anyway. But that became a whole like language amongst the fandom and between me and the fandom and stuff is. Well, because then I was trying to figure out when I started to go to conventions with my mobility scooter. Yeah. I didn't like the fact that, like, for me, I'm very uncomfortable with creating reactions in people that I can't control. That, like, and most people saw it and it would be like, oh no, what happened? And there was this thing. So it didn't matter how much I tried to message, everything's okay. Where I'm rolling along literally and like, whatever. It didn't matter what happened, that seeing the scooter itself would create a certain visceral reaction in people and association. Yeah. And so I had this idea one night, which is I got one of those little kid unicorn costumes. Right. And I put that on the scooter. And then so because automatically it changed the whole dynamic. Because the minute someone saw me roll in on the unicorn scooter, they totally embraced
the
it.
Uniscooter.
That's right. They were like, okay, she's fine. Yeah. You're not, someone isn't like tragically sad riding on a unicorn.
Yeah.
So then that took on a life of its own. So it became this whole language. The unicorn thing. Yeah.
I wish I could remember where that line came from. That every once in a while, like someone will ask me, like, "Oh, where did that line come from?" And I can usually like, "Oh, I thought about this or that," but that was one of those ones where I think some song was on repeat, and that line came into my head. Maybe I was watching Legend or something like that. I don't know.
Well, and I love it because I certainly love I love Legend and Labyrinth and all the fairy whatever folklore and stuff from when I was very young. But then beyond that, I also love, because it was the exact thing you talked about with Meg, of her discomfort. Yeah. Yet total acceptance by the end of this is a truth. Yeah. And so it was a really good way of kind of shrugging off the emotion, but at the same time embracing it. Yeah. Which to me is like the most beautiful thing. I love that, like, quiet, strong love, like that is the current that I really enjoy. Is just the, like, undeniable, I'm going to 100% give myself to this, but I'm not going to make a show of it.
Right. Kind of. Yeah. And again, that's like, it's there but not there on the page. There's so many like those moments where I'm just like, oh wow, okay. But I think it was all in our minds. We all knew that this was going to be, the Death of Meg episode, and I think even that you can see it from the guys too. Like, you can tell that they're always dialed in, but they knew what this episode meant and what it was supposed to do for the story overall.
Yeah, I thought that Jared added a really nice thing, because my only sadness was like there was no moment for a reaction of like, oh, Meg is dead. Yeah. But then Jared did like a look back in the cars, and that like, okay, that completed the.
Yeah, and the look he gives is
it's
great.
really,
it's really great.
Heartful. Yeah.
So you all are getting a lot of love in the chat for Goodbye Stranger in general.
Right on.
I feel like I know I can personally say it's one of my favorite episodes. Is the unicorn scooter's name Clarence? Is this true, Rachel?
Yes.
Oh,
it is.
I didn't know that. That's
well, so I was asked, and I was like, it's gotta be, right?
Yeah. I feel like it's just so you all are like kindred spirits. It's so iconic that you have the unicorn and that Robbie wrote the unicorn. And I don't know, it's just making my heart like really warm right now. But we did get a question in the chat for Rachel about the empty and how that happened, basically. How did you end up coming back to the show as the empty?
You'd have to ask the writers, because I'm not the creative person who came up with that idea. But I do know that I had the real hope that I would get to come back. And then, it had taken me, to be honest, it took me a while to embrace acting again, because I kind of had to deal with, I'm not, it's going to be different physically.
Right.
But it was so warm to come back to Supernatural as my first entrance into acting again. And yeah, I don't know, they came up with that idea as a way to bring me back, and I loved it. I loved getting to be that and do that. And there was, I'll tell you, because I guess I'm a bit like Megan, that like I'm a secret total sap, but I don't like to admit it. But I absolutely love Meg and Castiel together. Like there's something, like I love that love story. And so there was a moment that I really embraced with that, which was that and it was a Misha nuance of like when he first saw Meg, he got excited and then realized it was the empty. And to me that kind of that was a nice cap to that.
Yeah, that was very beautiful. So I'm gonna ask a pre-question.
Okay.
If I can ask this question.
Yeah.
Robbie, are you caught up with the entirety of Supernatural?
I am not. I am not caught up. I am not current, and it's through no fault of my other than my own, just being busy. But also, like, it's funny. I do have this feeling sometimes with certain shows where it's like I mean, I've gotten enough tweets about it that I kind of cobbled together what happened. But I'm like, if I never watch the ending of Supernatural, then it never really ended. It is the never-ending story part 2 for me. I've seen a couple episodes here and there, like when Jensen had directed another episode, I watched that one, and because I'm a fan of him as a director, and then Richard Speight, whenever he would, I think I've seen all, but I think the last season episodes that he directed. Don't tell him that, but sorry, Richard. But I usually would try to watch Richard, because I've known Richard, for 1,000 years, and I think he's a terrific actor, but he's also a terrific director, and I always like to see what he's up to. But I've just been behind. I'm way behind on all of my pop culture consumption, to be honest with you. I finally finished The Queen's Gambit. That was really good. So
that was great.
So yeah, that's probably about as current as I am. So yeah, no, sorry, I've not.
That's okay. So now everyone in the chat knows, because a lot of them are asking about reactions to the last episodes.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I highly recommend one of Rich's episodes, which was his last, 1518. Yeah. So I'm gonna.
And I got to work with Rich, which I was really excited about. That was something that was on my bucket list, and I got to work with him.
He's great. He's the best. I love that dude.
Is. He's one of my favorite directors.
He needs to get a haircut, but he's a great guy.
I think that's an inside joke, right?
It is. It's a very old joke that he's very tired of.
So, Robbie,
yes.
Another question we got online was there a particular arc or episode of Supernatural that was special to you?
That's an interesting question. I mean, look, I'm kind of an old school, I guess you'd call me an old school fan. Like, I love the journey that the boys go on for the first, like, 5 seasons, not to be a 5-season guy. But it really resonated with me on an emotional level, the arc they go on the first couple seasons, where I just mean speaking specifically them as brothers, especially for Sam to be sort of, I don't want to say rebellious, but like kind of like rejected that life, didn't want to be anything like his dad, and then found himself very much like his dad. That's certainly a journey I went on. My dad was a great guy, was awesome, and I love him and miss him every day. But I think, a lot of kids and parents had that sort of arc, and that just felt very emotional to me. And I wasn't there when the episode was created and aired, but when Jeffrey D. Morgan got to come back, for the 3,000th episode or 4,000th, whatever which it was, I thought that was just great to be able to see them, together. As like episodes, I mean, my favorite was always Mystery Spot, because I think it's just a great piece of writing. Jeremy's a terrific writer, and I just think it sort of encapsulated everything I loved about Supernatural, which was it could take these really high concept ideas, have a lot of fun with them, but then really inject a lot of just, trauma, pathos, emotional storytelling. I just watched this Danish film, and it's a very strange, and it's very dark, maybe not for everybody, but it's called Riders of Justice with Mads Mikkelsen, and it has this crazy tone with it where it can be almost broad slapstick, and then in the next scene just really tragic and heartbreaking. And that's stuff that I really loved about Supernatural. So any of the episodes that really kind of dug into that. And then, I mean, we've talked about this before. Personally, the episode that I had the most fun writing was Baby, which was an episode that I wrote. I don't remember which season. I don't. They all kind of blur.
I'll tell you an episode that I love that I think you wrote was Don't Call Me Shirley.
Oh yeah, I did. That was the last piece that I wrote. Yeah.
Because, like, to me, one of the things, I also love the brothers' story and their journey, but I loved the looks. It was the combination of humor, but also a serious look at what it is to be responsible for the world.
Yeah.
And these really crucial decisions and stuff. I don't know. I'm someone who was such a nerd and serious child and stuff. So I spent a lot of time kind of philosophically contemplating existence and looking at those big questions. And I love the place that the show often went, where it could look at that with a lightness, with a humor, but really look at those, what responsibility is, what creation is, like what being human is, why are we here, all these like major questions, but also have a levity to it.
Yeah, that was I hadn't expected to write that episode. I had written an episode previous to that one. I'm blanking on the name. Sorry, Safe House. And I thought that was the end for me. And I didn't know I was leaving the show at the time, but I was like, oh, okay, I'm done for the year. And it was all those things that you just said, Rachel, because it was like they're like, oh yeah, this is the episode where we confirmed that Chuck was God, and I was like, hang on, that seems like a big deal. And someone just said it in the chat, like it was like a play. Missy Jack, hey Missy Jack. And it was designed to be that way. And it was really fun to just let scenes kind of breathe in a way that they didn't normally, and to really kind of sink our teeth into all the things that you were talking about. Like someone on Twitter, did I know that Rob Benedict, aka Chuck, aka God, was going to become a big bad down the road? I didn't know any of that stuff. I mean, they didn't know that he was going to be God back in season whatever. Like, a lot of this stuff, is like we planned it, as we used to say. But it was a blast, and it was also great, knowing that there wasn't a ton of stuff for Sam and Dean in terms of the overall content of the episode, but knowing that it was going to be very emotional between the two of them, because there was this correlative, this physical representation, the Samulet that was going to be returning, but it was also like a plot point as well. But knowing I was going to be working with Rob and Curtis, Rob I got to know, socially through the show, and then Curtis I had the good fortune to meet. He came by a couple times to the office, and he's from Michigan. I'm from Michigan. I love that guy. I'm a huge, this is another one of my props. I brought a lot of props today. I'm a huge Moonlighting fan. This book just came out. It's an oral history of the show. I look forward to the oral history of Supernatural someday. But Curtis is just like is an incredible actor, and you know, they're both theater guys, and so I knew I could throw, you know, crazy long, you know, scenes at them, and they would crush them, and they did. I mean, there was a couple scenes that we had to cut. Again, my fault. Nobody else's. Not the powers that be. I wrote it a little too long. But it was really fun to write that episode, and for exactly all the reasons you just said. I was like, well, when am I going to get to like write God? And God is like a guy who doesn't want to write anymore and has like, not great feelings about humanity. Like that just felt like, you know, what a gift. You know, I didn't know it was gonna be our last episode, but it was a nice one to go out on.
I feel like it has the iconic also Rob singing.
That's true. That was like one of my first ideas, because I was like, hey, Bob, what do you think about this? Because I knew Bob was going to direct it, and he's a musician, and he took right to it. And I pitched that song. I was like, you know, a song like this, because I had seen Inside Llewyn Davis and loved that soundtrack, and that kind of music was what it felt like was right for the episode. And we kept saying like, oh, an episode or a song like that, a song like that, a song like that. And then it ended up being that song. And then I think I said to Rob at one point, I was like, boy, I really hope you like singing the song. Because you know he performs at these conventions as a singer-songwriter with his band, and I was like, you're going to get some requests, man. And so it's been really cool to see him do different versions of it and do different duets with it. It's a beautiful piece of writing. It's a great song. So yeah, that was a fun one to write.
Yeah, so just a reminder, because we only have 8 minutes left, that the fundraiser is almost at $200, which is awesome. And you can donate at the link that's in the chat, so feel free to do that. Julia Q is saying that it's her #1 favorite episode of all time, and I have to agree.
Thank you, Julia Q. And I'm sorry I'm not current on episodes. I'm sorry. I think I saw you. I think you or somebody else said comments.
And I just want to thank everyone who's donating. Just so you know, it is a volunteer organization, so all of that money goes to actually doing good, and it'll help a lot of people. So I'm really excited about that.
So Rachel, one of our last questions, we have a few minutes left, but they asked the same question for you, if there was a particular arc or episode of Supernatural that was special to you.
Well, that I was involved in, or
that you watched, whatever.
Okay, well, because I did speak about, I really loved the, you know, Don't Call Me Shirley, but also that whole look at God, and whether it be also, I actually really loved, if you know, I'm giving spoilers for you, Robbie, sorry, but you're late. But also like Alexander's character when he took on the role of God and stuff, and just that constant examination of what is existence and the darkness, and Emily did such a good job with that. So I loved all of those looks, but yeah, for myself, in terms of the storyline that I was involved with, I really did love that dynamic between Meg and Cass, and I don't think it took in terms of, I know people's heart are with different characters and ships and stuff, and I'm a big believer in, all those things can be true. And I don't think it takes away from anything. But I do feel like, especially for Meg, it was the experiencing of that love and connection and care for someone. Like, I don't think she reached a point where I don't think existence was appealing to her without him being alive, if that makes sense. So that was what I would consider really a deep love that existed, was just that he needed to exist and flourish, and there was nothing beyond that. It was that she couldn't help but, you know, ensure that was the case. Whether it be when she was nursing him, or when she, you know, and again, it was kind of like grudgingly all the time, but I loved that it was just that she realized existence was no fun without him, for whatever reason.
Right.
And I, like, to me, that was a really truthful, again, like very like to me that it was a very truthful, interesting exploration, and I definitely could get behind that story.
Thanks, Rachel. I wanted to mention that in the chat, somebody also thanked Max Rebo for Eileen and Charlie's creation.
Sure, yeah.
And development. I was curious if you can share with us a little bit about Eileen and kind of how that idea developed to bring her character onto the show.
I mean, it was, I had the idea for that character for a while, and she's named after a good friend of mine's cousin, actually, who's a huge Supernatural fan, and she was like in high school at the time, and I was like, oh, like I'll name her after her. A lovely Irish young lady. Yeah, I just thought, part of, when you come into a show late like I did, you're looking for new and different dynamics. It's really hard to introduce a new character, have their backstory, and have everything sort of resonate and be in place in the short time. And there ends up being a shorthand a lot of times on Supernatural where there's this tragic backstory that leads to being a hunter, and it's pretty universal. And it felt like, okay, well, that's a way to get this character involved. And I had worked with Shoshana before. I didn't really know her. It was kind of a similar thing with Rachel, or it was one of the shows I first started writing on. I was just the writer's assistant, and then I wrote an episode. But she was so great. There was a scene, and sorry, spoiler if you've never seen it, but it was a scene where her character goes out kind of in a blaze of glory. And I just loved what she brought to that character, but particularly in that sequence. And I was like, God, I want to see her just be a badass. And ever since I worked with her on that show, I was like just an actor I wanted to work with, and an actor that I thought given a part where that we could really collaborate on, we could build something together. Like people say, like I created those characters, but I didn't. Like I didn't create them in a vacuum. Obviously, I'm working with showrunners like Sarah and Bob and Jeremy and all the writers in Supernatural, but also like my big collaborators were those two, particularly those two characters. Like, and I also helped create a character that was that Timmy Amundsen got to play on the show. And Tim and I have worked on like 3 shows, and I hope I'm lucky enough to work with him again. And it's always a process for me. It's like I love actors. I love that collaboration. I love being able to work with them and build it out together. And with the character that Shoshana played, it was very early on. I reached out to her and I was like, hey, through her manager, I was like, hey, I think this is going to happen. I think the timing's right. Is there any way you can put us in touch? Because I don't have her contact information. And then we started an email chain just talking about the character, and very early on, like when I was still breaking the story, and it was invaluable to have her input and to be able to have her perspective. And then I told her, I was like, look, throughout this whole process, like if you have questions, you have anything like that, and it really became like something we built together.
And I'm so grateful because I've gotten to know Shoshana. She's one of my favorite human beings, and
she's amazing. Last time I saw you was we were all together. It was the 3 of us. We met for non-alcoholic beverages for me, but for all of us. But no, it was a collaboration, between the 2 of us. It started probably really when I was on Jericho and being like, wow, if I'm ever in a position where I could create a character, with her, that would be really fun. And yeah, we really built it up. And I was so grateful when they brought her back, and then she, got to do more episodes on it. And I was grateful to see that the fans really embraced her and her as a person, but her as a character as well. Or the character as well. And yeah, that was fun. She's amazing. She's like a one-person wrecking crew. She writes, acts, I'm sure directs, like everything. There's nothing she can't do.
She's absolutely brilliant. But I love that about you, Robbie, is you brought a lot of those characters that maybe didn't fit traditional paradigms.
Yeah.
And I know that like Shoshana and I have done panels and talking about the importance of having these characters. And,
100%.
And too many people think, I don't know, they think like, well, if you bring in a deaf character, you bring in a character in a wheelchair or whatever, that's going to be good for the audience, the people who are deaf or the people who are
right.
So they feel represented. And it's not, it's actually for all of us. Because I think there are like 0 human beings who are represented by that, like whatever homogenized idea of perfection that we so often see in film and television. And so we all feel, I find that like most of us feel represented whenever we see someone who is outside of that.
Yeah.
So I'm very grateful for all those characters where it's like, oh, I feel more seen, because just the fact that there are other people who aren't that traditional mold like me out there, makes me feel seen.
No, that's the big part and the important part and the hard part of, you know, being truly inclusive. And, you know, for me personally, you know, the person to thank is my mom. You know, from when I was a little kid, she was always, you know, she's a rehab nurse and always advocating to see people, you know, in her case, you know, she was working with people in wheelchairs, and like, we need to see people, you know, in these stories, and also stories where it's not just about being in a wheelchair. It's like let's just like, it's what true representation, inclusivity is all about. And she taught me all about that from a very, very, very early age, which I'm grateful for. Thanks, Mom, if you're watching.
Yes,
I love you.
Yeah, seriously.
I'm grateful too. All right, you all. So it's 8:01. So I just want to thank Rachel and Robbie so much for doing this.
Thank you.
Thanks to Nerds and Beyond, and thanks to Friends of Random Acts. They put their handles and everything in the chat, so you all can follow us along. There's a huge festival this weekend for Nerds and Beyond, so make sure that you follow all of the Nerds and Beyond festivals, and Friends of Random Acts does regular events like this, so make sure that you follow us as well. And I think we raised over $240.
Thank you to everyone who donated.
Thank you.
All right, bye you all. Thank you so much.
All right, bye guys. Great to see you.